This is Cara Harris, and this is a presentation on a problem-based lesson. This is a unit specifically designed for college freshmen in a freshman seminar course at Lipscomb University. For this particular lesson, I chose to focus on essentially the civil rights movement through the lens of the book Divergent by Veronica Roth. And I'm calling this sort of reframing stories, sort of new ways to look at maybe what we consider familiar stories. The driving question for this PBL will be, how do the factions that exist in the government set up in Divergent compare to the segregation laws in America? So for this particular course, for a freshman seminar course at Lipscomb, there are several learning objectives that are required, and there are 3 specifically that will be addressed through this unit. The first of which will be critical reading skills. This will be accomplished through the reading of the book Divergent, also through some critical discussion that will happen as we're reading, and then also, and maybe even especially, as the book is incorporated into the aspect of civil rights movements. So we're really looking at historical events through the eyes of the book and sort of weaving it in and looking at that piece of literature in a very, very critical way and in a very different way, and also using it to help us reframe actual events. Another of the objectives that we will reach is the development of an understanding of integrity. So this will happen some through the reading of stories of people of integrity. And this will be both black and white, people who demonstrate incredible integrity in times in which it is perhaps the most difficult time in their lives to be people of integrity. So students will hear stories of that. They will have to research those stories. They will have to present those stories and retell them. So that will be very helpful to their development of the understanding of integrity and how to be people of integrity. And this will also occur through teamwork, as students are learning how to pull their own weight, making sure that they are contributing an equal amount to the project, and making sure that everybody's involved. All things that are very good in helping that understanding of integrity, becoming a person of integrity. And the third will be developing habits, promoting academic success. So this will happen in several ways. The first of which will be through time management. So obviously, working on a project, they'll have some space, they'll have some time in which they have to complete things, which is not especially guided by me, the instructor. Students will also be using an application, a mobile application, that will actually help them in that process. So not only will they begin to understand sort of when they need to get things done in order to be successful in time management, but learning, okay, what resources are out there, what technologies can I use to help myself in that area. Students will also gain a very basic understanding of research skills. So even though we won't be engaging in any in-depth research, students will have to find out about the particular story that they choose. They will have to look at multiple perspectives, and they will have to present that story. And also students will have an opportunity to go visit the downtown Nashville Public Library, in which they will see sort of a space for resources, where they can come to look for resources, and what kinds of resources specifically are there. The procedures and activities for the unit will go essentially as follows. So it will be a 4-week unit. The beginning of the unit, week 1, will consist of reading the first 5 chapters of Divergent and then engaging in critical discussion. So sort of seeing where the book goes at that point, sort of what things are foreshadowed, thinking through to that, what we think might happen, what we sort of anticipate based on problems that are already arising in the story. After that, we will introduce issues of race, and we'll do that through 2 documentaries actually. So the first will be Race and Illusion of Power. Second will be Nashville Memories, the Civil Rights. So the first will give students a way to sort of frame racial tensions, racial history in America, give them sort of a starting point, conversation point, and really a launching point into those conversations in a safe way. And then the other will expose them to specific civil rights stories from Nashville, which is a great way to sort of incorporate the community, for them to understand what actually happened here, not very far away, that there are people still around that were very involved in that, and maybe just expose them to some stories of the civil rights that maybe they didn't get in their education prior to this point. From there, we'll move into a discussion of the similarities between the book and the civil rights movement. So this will be a critical discussion. And then that's when we'll present the driving question. And once students are given that, then they will be split into groups of 3 to 4, depending on class size. And then they'll be able to choose from a list of sort of lesser known civil rights stories, but particularly that are examples of sort of be challenging some of our assumptions, stereotypes of this movement. So they'll choose from a list, and then they'll proceed to research that. And then, of course, we'll take the field trip and to the library. That's where we'll also see the civil rights oral history archives. So students will have an opportunity to research there. And then in the 4th week, that will be their last. They'll be given at least one class period to continue working on their projects, and then they will present. So they get to choose how they will present it, what format. Is that going to be printed? Is that going to be digital? Are they just going to show it on a projector? They could even choose to show it in movie form. There's a lot of flexibility there. And then based on that, that format will also be designed in such a way that it can be presented at the Lipscomb University Beeman Library. So students will get to showcase their projects, and that will be advertised to the campus so that students and faculty are encouraged to come by and take a look at their final projects. Some of the technology considerations is the time management software that I mentioned. Wunderlist specifically is one that students will be using. That is a mobile application. It allows for a to-do list, deadlines, calendars, those kinds of things. So each student in each group will be using that. Comic Life is an application as well that students will use to create their comic and or graphic novel to retell their stories. So they're not having to draw anything from scratch, though if they wanted to, they certainly could. So it's a way to sort of manageably do this creative project in a way that allows them to do it sort of a lot of different ways and accomplish a lot of different goals and designs and things of that nature. We'll also be using GroupMe, which is available to any student with access to a phone or computer for collaboration. So there'll be one GroupMe for the entire class in which the instructor can send out announcements or any other reminders or things that they might need to communicate to the class about the project specifically. And then each group will be required to have their own GroupMe group so that they can collaborate together, build on things when they're not together, things like that. And even in class, that can be helpful sometimes. And then, of course, how they present. There can be a lot of technological opportunities there. So they can choose to present it digitally. They can choose to allow students to download it. Any number of options available. Some of the instructional strategies are direct instruction through class discussions, the book, the documentaries, all those kinds of things, and then there'll be a somewhat experiential learning through the field trip to the Nashville Public Library when they get to see and hear the civil rights archives. So they're sort of doing their research there, learning a little bit more about Nashville and that kind of thing. And then, of course, students will be engaging in their own problem-based learning as they decide how to structure their comic or graphic novel, how it will be presented, which student will take on which roles. And then there will also be formative assessment via reflections that each student will turn in at the end of every week. Essentially, this is designed to help students sort of take a look at something that may feel very familiar and hopefully expose it to them in a way that's unfamiliar, and then challenge some stereotypes and create some new space for new language, while also learning how to utilize their mobile technologies that nearly all upscale students have now, in ways that are really helpful to their learning, helpful to what they're producing academically, and that they can really develop those skills and learn how to use those tools to prepare them as they go forward in higher education.